The Hogwarts Express is one of the most instantly recognizable props in the entire Harry Potter series, but given the late 1800s time frame for Hogwarts Legacy, does it belong in the video game? Is the Hogwarts Express actually a giant plot hole? I think we could actually see a brand new take on the iconic locomotive, and in today's video, I'll explain why. Retro Raconteur here. I'm just a dad who loves games and the stories they tell, and I've noticed there's a lot of confusion online about the Hogwarts Express, specifically when it was originally created. I have a theory as to why, and I think it's primarily due to three reasons. Number one, Google search results. Two, an error by J.K. Rowling. And three, the appearance of the train in the movies. Let's start with the Google search. At the time of this recording, if you were to go online and Google when was the Hogwarts Express built, you would see the following as a highlighted answer. Notice the section in bold that says April of 1937. As a result of this, I've noticed a lot of fans online assuming the Hogwarts Express wouldn't be in the game since it takes place in the late 1800s. But we need to read the full excerpt first. They're citing the HP Wiki, and this particular bit is actually referencing a video where the Hogwarts Express theme park actor at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter said the train was a GWR Model 5900 that was built in 1936. In reality, the GWR 5900 doesn't exist, and the locomotive at the theme park is a GWR 4900, which was built in 1937. But I would argue that when folks search about the Hogwarts Express on Google, they're far more likely to be asking when the fictional model of the original book series was designed, and not the model at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter in Orlando, Florida. If you agree, you can actually submit feedback to Google on this answer by clicking the little feedback icon just here. So when did J.K. Rowling intend for the train to have been built within the canon of the series? Using information compiled from the original series, from Pottermore, and even Cursed Child, we're left with the following. The Minister of Magic in the year 1827, Adeline Gamble, proposed a Muggle solution to the Wizarding World problem of transporting hundreds of students to a magic school without attracting the attention of Muggles. Prior to this point, witches and wizards had been using a variety of methods to travel to the school, including magical creatures, broomsticks, and even portkeys. Now, unsurprisingly, pureblood families weren't too pleased with Gamble's suggestion to use a Muggle technology. However, she would ultimately go through with the plan anyway. She commissioned Muggle engineers at a company called Crewworks to build the train. Now, Crewworks is actually a real-world company, but more on that in 1 second. Now, both the train and its tracks were completed in 1803, but here's the problem. J.K. Rowling made a bit of a continuity error here because Crew, at least in the real world, wasn't built until 1840. King's Cross Station also wasn't open for passengers until October of 1852. Now, of course, here's where I have to point out that, yes, this is all fiction, and there are going to be some little details like this that are off and don't quite line up from time to time. Okay, back to the canon though. The Ministry of Magic used the biggest concealment charm Britain had ever seen, as well as 167 memory charms to move the Hogwarts Express. The Muggle engineers all awoke the next morning with a feeling they had misplaced something, but they couldn't remember what. Something very, very large. The Ministry would issue a decree that required all Hogwarts students to travel via the Hogwarts Express or not attend at all. Of course, we all know what happened in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets when he and Ron missed the train.
The train leaves at exactly 11 o'clock. We've missed it.
Harry, if we can't get through, maybe Mum and Dad can't get back.
Now, honestly, I think Rowling could attempt to clear this up a bit and make it line up more with the real-world history. I would also argue that Google should change this search result to match the canon answer rather than using an answer from the theme park actor. As for Hogwarts Legacy, even with the continuity errors surrounding King's Cross and the Crewworks company, we should definitely be seeing the Hogwarts Express by the late 1800s, which is when the game is set to take place. But then we have to decide what the train should look like, and that's where our third problem comes into play: how it's pictured in the movies. Look, the train pictured here is iconic, and it's most likely what all of us are thinking when we imagine the Hogwarts Express. The train used for the films is a Castle-class steam locomotive number 5972 known as Alton Hall. This particular model wasn't actually developed until around the 1930s. There's a fairly detailed Reddit post that breaks down both the locomotive itself as well as the carriages we see in the movie. I'll link it down in the video description below. The too long didn't read for the post is essentially, if the devs want to be true to the late 1800s time period, then the Hogwarts Express and its carriages should look radically different than what we see in the films. I'll be honest with you guys, for me personally, I'd be totally fine with them leaving the Hogwarts Express exactly as we see it in the movies. I know some, like those in the Reddit post above, are passionate about maintaining the historical accuracy, and I get it, but for me, it's just not something that would personally break the immersion for me. Because that movie design is so iconic, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the devs at Avalanche are just like, hey, let's just stick with that design. Now, that being said, if I could choose, if I could decide what's going to happen, I would prefer that they go ahead and change it, preferably to something that's their own interpretation, and also something that would fit within the late 1800s time frame. If they really wanted to go the extra mile, then we should see some slight tweaks to the design that would better match the type of locomotive likely to have been designed for the Ministry back in 1827. Now, that Reddit post I mentioned, there's also some comments about what a train from that time period, if it was made that early, what it would have looked like. So again, I don't know if they're going to be that historically accurate. I think they certainly should have the creative freedom to change things up a bit if they want. After all, we are talking about art here, and art is always subject to interpretation. Consider that the Hogwarts Express in the movies doesn't match up exactly with the train featured on the cover of the original British version of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Also, in 2015, artist Jim Kay had a completely different take for the Hogwarts Express, which appeared on the front cover of the new illustrated edition of Sorcerer's Stone. Now, some fans in that very same Reddit post I mentioned earlier seem to think there's a chance we won't see the Hogwarts Express at all, given that the trailer shows someone arriving to the school by carriage. According to the canon, though, this would actually be against the rules put in place by the Ministry. Once the Hogwarts Express was implemented, it is the required method of transportation for students when traveling to and from the school. Of course, we also know they don't always land right there on the Hogwarts grounds. It depends on what year they are in school. We all know about the first years and how they sail across on the Black Lake. And then there are various other ways that Harry gets to the school throughout the rest of the books. Now, we do already know that our character receives a late acceptance letter to attend Hogwarts, which means I guess that it's possible our student could require a special mode of transportation to the school if they're arriving after everyone else. I'm not quite sure that's what they mean, though, by late acceptance letter. If the old leaks hold to be true, then that late acceptance letter actually refers to our character starting school in year 5 rather than as a traditional first year. We don't really know why that's the case just yet. For my personal take, I think it would really be a shame if we don't travel to the school in the Hogwarts Express, at least see it in a cutscene, just considering how iconic it is for the entire series. And according to the canon, in the late 1800s, all students should be required to travel to Hogwarts on the Hogwarts Express. Do you guys want to see the Hogwarts Express in the game? And if so, are you hoping Avalanche will change its design? Let me know in the comments below. If you're new here, I've got some videos on the left and right of the screen that I think you would really love. As always, guys, thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.